Noel Duggan, also known by the moniker Kingsize, is a name that has become synonymous with organized crime in Ireland. His life, filled with high-stakes criminal enterprises, dangerous alliances, and a violent feud between two of Ireland's most notorious criminal families, is a tale of ambition, greed, and ultimately tragedy. Duggan's journey from a troubled youth in Dublin to one of Ireland's most feared and influential criminals is marked by his involvement in the cigarette smuggling trade, his connections with the Hutch crime family, and his tragic murder at the hands of the Kinahan cartel. His story remains one of intrigue and caution in the annals of Irish criminal history. Noel Duggan was born in the early 1970s in Dublin, Ireland, into a working-class family. While not much is known about his early years, Duggan's upbringing in the rough neighborhoods of Dublin likely played a key role in shaping his future. Growing up in an environment marked by social unrest, poverty, and violence, Duggan faced many challenges. Like many individuals raised in such conditions, he found himself drawn to a life of crime as a means of survival and, eventually, as a means of advancement. His early offenses were likely minor, such as burglaries and petty theft, but they set the foundation for the much darker path he would follow. Duggan's criminal activities were, in part, a product of the harsh Dublin streets and the rampant economic disparity. As he grew older, Duggan quickly realized that there were much larger opportunities for wealth and power in the world of organized crime. This realization would lead him into the dangerous world of smuggling and, later, to his affiliation with one of Ireland's most infamous criminal families. Duggan's early years seemed marked by struggles and adversities, but they were also foundational to his transformation into a prominent criminal figure. His connections to the underground world of Dublin's criminal scene would serve him well as he made his way up the ranks of the Irish underworld, gaining the trust and admiration of other key figures in the business. By the early 1990s, Noel Duggan's ambitions had grown, and so had the scope of his criminal activities. He became heavily involved in Ireland's cigarette smuggling trade, which at the time was a highly lucrative business. The practice involved importing large quantities of cigarettes into Ireland without paying the required taxes, resulting in a huge profit margin for those involved. It was an operation that required both smarts and discretion, and Duggan had both in abundance. His association with the smuggling trade allowed Duggan to amass significant wealth. However, unlike some of his counterparts who became embroiled in the physical labor of smuggling, Duggan was known for being a strategic figure in the operations, orchestrating the logistics behind the scenes. This allowed him to evade much of the risk involved, earning him a reputation as a shrewd and calculated criminal mastermind. Duggan's nickname, Kingsize, stemmed from his larger-than-life presence and his role in orchestrating one of Ireland's most prolific cigarette smuggling operations. His wealth grew rapidly as the cigarette smuggling trade flourished, and he soon became a key player within Ireland's organized crime scene. Duggan's success allowed him to build valuable relationships with other figures in the criminal underworld, most notably the Hutch crime family, a key player in Dublin's crime scene. However, despite his increasing wealth and power, Duggan managed to keep a relatively low profile. He was known to operate behind the scenes, often out of the public eye, while his criminal operations flourished. It was this ability to remain in the shadows while reaping the benefits of illicit trade that made Duggan an even more formidable figure in Ireland's criminal underworld. His growing wealth and influence made Duggan a valuable ally to those involved in organized crime, but it also made him an inevitable target for law enforcement. Despite facing several investigations into his activities, Duggan maintained a skillful ability to avoid arrest, remaining a free man despite his high-profile involvement in illicit operations. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Ireland's criminal landscape was dominated by two major families, the Hutch family and the Kinahan family. The rivalry between these two groups escalated into a violent feud that would leave a trail of bloodshed and destruction throughout the country. Duggan, whose involvement in the world of organized crime had grown over the years, became closely associated with the Hutch family. He had built up significant ties within the Hutch organization, a relationship that would prove to be both lucrative and deadly. The feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families became one of the most violent and well-documented gang wars in Ireland's history. The conflict was driven by control over drug trafficking, smuggling routes, and territory. Duggan's involvement with the Hutch family meant that he was thrust into the heart of the conflict. His strategic mind and experience in organizing criminal operations made him an asset to the Hutch side, and he played a key role in their operations. However, his involvement in this feud would eventually lead to his tragic downfall. The intense feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families was not only a battle for dominance over criminal enterprises, but also a deeply personal rivalry. The Kinahans were determined to eliminate anyone standing in their way, and Duggan, with his key role in the Hutch family, became a prime target. Duggan's connections to the Hutch family made him an even more prominent figure in the conflict, and as tensions between the two factions escalated, the risk to his life grew greater. In 2016, the violence between the two families reached a peak. The Kinahan cartel, determined to eliminate their rivals, had no qualms about using extreme violence to gain the upper hand. Duggan, as a major player in the Hutch organization, became a prime target. His position within the Hutch group made him an enemy of the Kinahan cartel, and it was only a matter of time before the brutal nature of the feud would catch up to him. On the morning of March 23, 2016, Noel Duggan's life came to a violent and tragic end. Duggan was shot and killed outside his home in Ratawath, County Meath. The murder was a targeted assassination, and it was widely believed to have been orchestrated by the Kinahan cartel. His death marked a significant moment in the Hutch-Kinahan feud, and it sent a clear message to the Hutch family and their associates. The circumstances surrounding Duggan's murder were chilling. He was gunned down in broad daylight, outside his residence, an act that demonstrated the level of ruthlessness and brutality the Kinahan cartel was willing to employ in order to eliminate their enemies. Duggan's killing was described as a cowardly and callous act during his funeral, a reflection of the public's shock and disgust over the brutal nature of the crime. His death sent ripples through Ireland's criminal world, marking a major turning point in the ongoing conflict between the two families. Duggan's death was not just a loss for the Hutch family, but also a grim reminder of the violence and bloodshed that defined the criminal landscape in Ireland during that time. His death was a tragic culmination of a life spent in the pursuit of power, wealth, and control in a world built on crime and brutality. Despite Duggan's death, the ongoing feud between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued, fueled by anger, retaliation, and a desire for control. Duggan's murder did little to quell the violence, and his passing was but one chapter in a bloody saga that would stretch on for years. Following Duggan's murder, the violence between the Hutch and Kinahan families continued unabated. The killing of Duggan served as a catalyst for further retaliation and conflict between the two groups, with both sides continuing to target each other's members and associates. The feud between the families remained one of the most high-profile and dangerous criminal conflicts in Ireland, with several other individuals being killed in the following months and years. Duggan's death also brought attention to the wider issues of organized crime in Ireland, particularly the role of criminal families in smuggling, drug trafficking, and other illegal enterprises. Law enforcement agencies in Ireland continued to investigate the Kinahan cartel and the Hutch family, making arrests and attempting to dismantle their operations. However, the entrenched power of these criminal organizations proved difficult to challenge, and the violence associated with the feud persisted for years. Despite multiple law enforcement efforts to curtail the influence of the criminal families, Duggan's death demonstrated the deep roots these families had in the criminal world, making it difficult to disrupt their operations. Marking the end of Noel Duggan's life was the violent and untimely manner in which it occurred. Duggan's criminal legacy, particularly his role in the cigarette smuggling trade and his central position within the Hutch crime family, left an indelible mark on Ireland's criminal landscape. The aftermath of his murder served as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of a life spent in organized crime. Duggan's story is one of ambition, ruthlessness, and tragedy. His rise from a petty criminal to one of Ireland's most influential and feared criminals was marked by his ability to avoid detection while making vast amounts of money. But his ties to the Hutch crime family, his role in the violent feud, and the ruthless Kinahan cartel ultimately sealed his fate. Duggan's life is a cautionary tale about the dangers of the criminal world and the price that many criminals pay when they become too entrenched in a life of violence. His legacy is also a stark reflection of the cycles of violence and bloodshed that have long plagued Ireland's criminal landscape. Duggan's name continues to echo as a symbol of both the opportunities and dangers that come with organized crime. That is it for our video today. Like and subscribe and comment below what you think of Noel Duggan, and I will see you on the next video.